They tell me you're a pretty good spiritual director, and I've come up with a spiritual problem. I'm anxious. Sit down, Your Majesty, says I. So he sits down, and I say, what can I do for you? And he says, well, they tell me you're a pretty good spiritual director, and I've come up with a spiritual problem. I'm anxious. I'm finding it hard to trust in God because I've got my armies in Russia, see? And I'm spending sleepless nights wondering how it's going to turn out. And I say, well, Your Majesty, I could certainly propose something for that. What I suggest is that you read Matthew 6. You know, look at the birds of the air, look at the lilies of the field. They're not anxious, they're not worried. By this stage, you're wondering, by the time you get to this stage, you're wondering who is crazier, he or I? But I'm going along with this lunatic, see? That's what the wise guru does with you in the beginning. He goes along with you. He takes your trouble seriously. He'll wipe a tear or two from your eye. Because he, sit down, Your Majesty, says I. So he sits down, and I say, what can I do for you? And he says, well, they tell me you're a pretty good spiritual director, and I've come up with a spiritual problem. I'm anxious. I'm finding it hard to trust in God because I've got my armies in Russia, see? And I am spending sleepless nights wondering how it's going to turn out. And I say, well, Your Majesty, I could certainly propose something for that. What I suggest is that you read Matthew 6. You know, look at the birds of the air, look at the lilies of the field. They're not anxious, they're not worried. By this stage, you're wondering, by the time we get to this stage, you're wondering who is crazier, he or I? But I'm going along with this lunatic, see? That's what the wise guru does with you in the beginning. He goes along with you. He takes your trouble seriously. He'll wipe a tear or two from your eye. Because you're crazy, but you don't know it as yet. The time soon has to come when he'll pull the rug from under your feet and tell you, get off it, you're not Napoleon. In those famous dialogues of Catherine of Siena, God is reported to have said to her, I am he who is. You are she who is not. Ever experienced your is-notness? In the East, we have an image for this, the image of the dancer and the dance. God is viewed as the dancer and creation as his dance. It isn't as if he is the big dancer and you are the little dancer. Oh no. You got it all wrong. You're not a dancer at all. You are being danced. Ever experienced that? When this guy comes to his senses and realizes that he is not Napoleon, he does not cease to be, he continues to be. But he suddenly realizes that he is something other than what he thought he was. Is that clear? He realizes that he is something other than what he thought he was. To lose the self is to suddenly realize that you are something other than what you thought you were. You thought you were center. Now you experience yourself as satellite. You thought you were dancer. You now experience yourself, is this real? Or am I conditioned? Am I brainwashed? My dears, to doubt is infinitely more important than to adore. To question is so much more important than to believe. And it's because we don't do this that we have people killing one another. The readiness, the openness to question everything. The readiness to doubt everything. Doubt, says a great Indian mystic, is a healing balm. though it burn at first, it will heal you. It begins to burn because when those convictions that you've introjected, are beginning to wear off, you feel as if you're losing your whole life. My gosh, I've been a communist all my life. I was seeing the world through communist eyes. Has it ever struck you that if you are thinking as a communist, you've ceased to think? If you're thinking as a communist, you've ceased to think. Does that make sense? How about if you're thinking as a Muslim? Same thing. As soon as you're thinking as anything, you've stopped thinking. As soon as you're looking at the world through an ideology, but what is an ideology? Those are words. Those are theories. Those are ideas and concepts. No reality fits an ideology. And all good ideologues will tell you that. They'll say, well, this is the best we've come up with. Doesn't fit. Life is beyond that. That is why people are always searching for a meaning to life. Has it never struck you that life has no meaning? Cannot have meaning. What is meaning? Meaning is a formula. Meaning is something that makes sense to the mind. But every time you've made sense out of reality, you bump into something that destroys it all. And you say, well, God is a mystery, life is a mystery. We don't really understand it. We don't really know. It's like the mystics graft meaning onto their experience of reality. But it is really only a graft. Falteringly, inadequately, they try to express something. They give some clue, they give an indication. As I'll tell you when we talk about the scriptures, they tell you a story, hoping you'll get a clue. It's like the person born blind, the man born blind, who says to you, that color green, is it hot or is it cold? Neti, not that, not that. Is it long or is it short? Not that. Is it sweet or is it sour? Not that. Is it round or is it oval or is it square? Not that, not that. See, he's coming from the other senses, from his limited experience. He has no words, no concepts for this world of which he has no idea, no intuition, no experience, a world of colors. One can only speak in analogies. Not that. No matter what he asks, it isn't that. Your wording is wrong. Your question is absurd. So, C.S. Lewis says something like this. I'm not quite sure I've got the exact words, but it's something like this. It's like asking, how many minutes are there in the color yellow? And everybody's taking it very seriously and discussing it and fighting about it. You know what the answer to that question is? How many minutes are there in the color yellow? 25 carats. And the other guy says, no, 17 potatoes. And then they're fighting. Not that. Not that. The ultimate. This is what is ultimate in the human knowledge of God. To know that we do not know. Our great tragedy, my dears, is that we know too much. We think we know. That is our tragedy. So we never discover. In fact, Thomas Aquinas is not only a theologian, he's a great philosopher. And he says repeatedly in many places, all the efforts of the human mind cannot exhaust the essence of a single fly. Cannot. We really have no notion of the nature of a fly, of an individual fly. Just what I was telling you yesterday. The concept is abstract. reality, concrete, etc. He puts it in his own unique way. The limitations of the human mind. The danger we have of equating the concept with reality, and as a result, every new idea, every great idea, when it first began, was in a minority of one. That guy called Jesus Christ, minority of one. Everybody was saying something different. Buddha, minority of one. Everyone was saying something different. In fact, it's even worse. I think it was Bertrand Russell who said, every great idea starts out as a blasphemy. That's well and accurately put. You're going to hear lots of blasphemies during these days. He hath blasphemed. Because they're crazy. They're lunatics. And the sooner you see this, the better for your mental and spiritual health. Don't trust them. Don't trust your best friends. Get disillusioned with your best friends. They're very clever, as you are when you're dealing with everybody, though you probably don't know it. Oh, you're so wily and subtle and clever. You're putting on a great act. I'm not being very complimentary, am I? But you want to wake up. You're putting on a great act, aren't you? And you don't even know it. You think you're being so loving. Ha ha. Whom are you loving? Even when you go in for self-sacrifice, as Claire was telling us a little while ago. Gives you a good feeling, doesn't it? Me, I'm sacrificing myself. I'm living up to my ideal. Boy, you're getting something out of it, aren't you? You're always getting something out of everything you do until you wake up. So there it is. Step one, realize that you don't want to wake up. It's pretty difficult to wake up. When you have been hypnotized into thinking, as I said to you before, that a scrap of old newspaper is a check for $1 million, you're hypnotized. How difficult it is to tear yourself away from that scrap of newspaper. That's when renunciation comes in. Anytime you're practicing renunciation, you're deluded. How about that now? You're deluded. What are you renouncing? Anytime you renounce something, you're tied forever to the thing you renounce. N-E-I-L-L. A-S. Need. Summer. Paperback. You find it everywhere. Now, what was the secret of his success? He'd be getting, so to speak, the worst kind of kids. The kids that everybody had despaired of. And within 6 months, they were all transformed. Listen to what he says. Extraordinary words. Holy words. That's a holy book. He says, every child has God in him. Our attempts to mold the child will turn the God into a devil. Our attempts to mold the child will turn the God into a devil. Children come to my school, little devils, hating the world, destructive, unmannerly, lying, thieving, bad-tempered. In 6 months, they are happy, healthy children who do no evil. These are amazing words coming from a man who has this school of his in Britain that is regularly inspected by people coming from the Ministry of Education and by any headmaster or headmistress or anyone who cared to go there. Amazing. Well, it was his charism. You don't do this kind of thing from a blueprint. You've got to be a special kind of person. He says in some of his lectures, to headmasters and headmistresses. He said, come on into Summerhill and you will find that all the fruit trees are laden with fruit. Nobody's taking the fruits off the trees. No desire to attack authority. Well fed, and they don't feel any desire to attack authority. There's no resentment and anger. Come to Summerhill and you'll never find a handicapped child with a nickname. You know how cruel kids can be when someone stammers? He says you'll never find anyone needling a stammerer. Never. There's no violence in those kids. You know why? No one's practicing violence on them. That's why. Listen to these words of revelation, sacred words. There's no violence in those kids. Do you know why? Because no one has practiced violence on them. That's why. You know something else? We have peoples in the world who are like this, no matter what your scholars and priests tell you, and your theologians. There are and have been people where there has been no quarrels, no jealousies, no conflicts, no wars, no enmities, none. Now there are many things you have to understand here, or basically just one thing, that can be expressed in many ways. Imagine a patient goes to a doctor and tells the doctor what he is suffering from. And the doctor says, very well, I've understood your symptoms. You know what I'll do? I'll prescribe a medicine for your neighbor. And the patient replies, thank you very much, doctor. That makes me feel much better. Isn't that absurd? Isn't that absurd? That's what we're all doing. Repeatedly, people are doing this. The sleeper always feels that he'll feel much better if somebody else changes. You're suffering because you're asleep. And you think how wonderful life would be if somebody else changed. How wonderful life would be if my neighbor changed, my wife changed, my husband changed, my boss changed. There's that lovely Zen written by one of the great masters. I sometimes make an exercise out of it. I'm not going to have time to do it here. When we have these longer courses of 8 or 9 days, then we can afford that kind of period. The man says, if my grumbling wife were alive tonight, I would have enjoyed the sight of the moon. If my grumbling wife had been alive tonight, how I would have enjoyed the sight of the moon. We better not go too deep into that one. Well, we always want somebody else to change so that we will feel good. But has it ever struck you that if your wife changes or your husband changes, what does that do to you? You're just as vulnerable as before. You're just as idiotic as before. You're just as asleep as before. It's you who need to change. It's you who need to take the medicine. So it's always the feeling of, I feel good because the world is right. Wrong. The world is right because I feel good. That's what all the mystics are saying. When you awake, when you understand, when you see, it was never the same again. If you're lucky, if the gods are gracious, if you are gifted with divine grace, use any theological expression you want, you might suddenly understand who I is. And you'll never be the same again. Never, ever. And that's where you dwell. And nothing will ever be able to touch you again. and no one will ever be able to hurt you again. And you will fear no one, and you will fear nothing. Isn't that extraordinary? You live like a king, like a queen. This is what it means to live like royalty, not the rubbish in the newspapers, and where you got a lot of money, put a lot of rock, and you're as terrified and confused as everyone else, and you're trying to hide it. And you fear no one, because you fear losing nothing. Don't give a damn. It doesn't matter. Success, failure means nothing. Honor, disgrace, nothing. You make a fool of yourself, means nothing. Ah, is that a wonderful state to be in? Now, some people arrive at this painstakingly, step by step, through months and weeks of self-awareness. But I'll promise you one thing, I've not known of one person who would give time to being aware, who wouldn't see the difference in a matter of weeks. Already the quality of your living is changing. You don't have to who would give time to being aware, who wouldn't see the difference in a matter of weeks. You approve of, for that matter. Sounds like a new world, doesn't it? Ready to get something new? No judgment, no comment, no attitude. One observes, one studies, one watches. Not even with the desire to change what is. Because if you desire to change what is into what you think should be, you're no longer understanding what is. Example, a dog trainer who's attempting to understand a dog so that he can train the dog to perform certain tricks. The scientist who observes the behavior of ants with no further end in view. He just wants to study ants and to learn as much as possible about them. And he has no further aim. He's not attempting to train them or to get anything out of them. He's interested in ants. He wants to learn as much as he can about them. That's the attitude. The day you attain that, you will experience a miracle. You will change. Effortlessly, correctly. Change will happen. You will not bring it about. As the light of awareness settles upon your darkness, whatever is evil will disappear. Whatever is good will be fostered. You will have to experience that for yourself. But this calls for a disciplined mind. discipline, I'm not talking about effort. I'm talking about something else. Have you ever studied an athlete whose whole life is athletics, has danced? Now these are analogies. These are images. You cannot take them literally. They just give you a clue, they give you a hint, they're pointers, don't forget. So you cannot press them too much. Don't take them literally. I'll come back to this idea again when we come back to the scriptures. The scriptures are mystical poetry. They're not scientific descriptions, but more about that when we come to the Bible. So, the loss of the self. When you understand who, what you are, the self, the illusory self, is lost. As a step to attaining that, to moving towards that, I suggest this. Again, this is a kind of an imagery. Now don't go around imagining that this I is another guy and me is another person. No. These are ways of talking. But as you begin to understand the transitory nature, the transient nature of all these things that they keep attributing to you, you dissociate yourself increasingly from them. That's about the best you can do, I think, to prepare the ground for the loss of the self, for the death to the self. To move on to another idea, this whole matter of one's personal worth, self-esteem, self-worth, where do you get it from? Do you get it from success in your work? Do you get it from having a lot of money? Do you get it from attracting a lot of men if you're a woman, or a lot of women if you are a man? How fragile that is. How transitory. And when we